Sure, thank you. Yeah, sure. $25 a week for the sales tax credit.
Oh, okay, that's American.
Good night.
We have the one that goes.
Sorry, I don't have any. I think it was maybe sent out already. But we'll make sure.
Okay, because I don't think I've gotten it. I have one that does not have a check, so, and it's not yours. No, it's not
It's
yours.
Beth's though. I bet it's Beth's, 802 Biddle.
No.
She said, she submitted hers. I read it.
Anyway, call me tomorrow.
Yeah, how's it going? Not so good, huh?
Suggested that you would have
I can't even remember. Americans. No.
Well, I figured if they were up and down and bring it down, then everybody would come. It's.
Mary.
Laura, where do you live?
I,
Sure,
I can do that. Or not because of the meeting.
I think the meeting will last whatever it lasts. And it would be nice that
Oh, people will talk faster.
they might not make sense. Keep chattering.
Yeah.
gibberish, you know, when you
Yeah.
go to hypothermia, you know, you just start to babble. Oh, we do that anyway.
Yes, I do. No, you can't. See, if I leave, he's gonna take my seat. No, that's not mine.
Your phone and your, earlier,
Sorry?
finally get your phone and your,
Yes. Apparently it was two pieces.
oh.
I have to go up and pull out my manual
Yes.
to read these for about.
72 or something? I think that sounds about
1,
right.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's great. And finally, I see a little diagram goes, hey, take the frame out. And I can't figure it out until I'm trying to force it, and then I get a little cat. Okay.
You need a 12-year-old.
No, I didn't. I still messed up my phone because I was holding it and pushing different buttons. First we called 911 and then said I'm dead and.
Oh, here.
We said, and all this other stuff. So. I didn't release it. I saw it real quick. I turned it off and put it back on. And came back to life.
Yeah.
And it's bigger than my other one in my pockets, so. I took it used to.
Well, I feel like. But now you can drop it and choose.
And I had one. Just. Apparently it wasn't as strong because it was not going. But yes, it was quite a chore.
Get out of there.
I just sort of want you to put something.
Nothing's being there.
About that. No. Everything there is about.
They were signing up or not.
What's saying, what's reading in quote? I'm waiting for like, waiting for like, there's a euro. You guys already got other quotes? No, actually, writer bought.
Hi there.
Writer bought and says, I don't have to.
Hello.
Oh, really? You gave us some of the quote. And then Lisa said, one wall. We said, why don't you and Dwayne work together? Yeah. We can.
In the day.
Yeah, pretty much. It's one. We don't know what's gonna happen today, but. Which is the license. You gotta think of one in the library. I would do it yourself. We gotta meet next week to see if that's still gonna be your plan.
I thought that was meeting this tomorrow.
Writing lawsuits, that's the rate stuff.
Now the agenda back.
Behind you. Hi, Betsy.
Happy New Year. No, I'm down. No, just.
That's why they wanted to know that. Sorry, it's reservation, it'll seating only, Bob. Now, where would you like to sit?
You can stay where I am. You sit up here more regularly.
Hi.
Good, how are you?
I know, we have many numbers of children out there.
Remember, I don't know where it's guy or.
So, it's possible.
I got pretty good. Yeah. Was.
Hello, how are you? Good.
Yeah, your house down. Yeah, that's a little later. What's up here? They don't care. They go. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eighteen inches off the floor, so we're better go over the stove.
Yeah. And then maybe. Fine.
These rises, man.
I mean, if you want to do it for your own.
Oh, no, no.
Say,
You're gonna sit next to me. I'm comfortable with that.
But we have time.
we're confident, Jerry. Hi, John. Where's?
I think it's like a week and a half, so.
I guess I got them out at half game.
Anything we.
Oh, there's not any joke there? No. Needs a flashlight. So, in your house? Behind the house. Behind the house. Park all the cars. Hey, I was told your car has 700,000. They were gonna put it down, and it worked better than the car that they were gonna put it. Of course, it's. They're like going. That's just car magic. Parts move the other way. Yes, they told me. I'm very happy to do that. Thanks.
There you go.
Thank you. Absolutely. If these not one, we're gonna.
That's right. So far.
They're gonna part it out and realize it was shaking and they're gonna part. That's really, that's great. It's stunning. It's,
I may have.
that was a very well made car.
And
It was like magic. And, you know, I mean,
Well,
what is the world? I was super careful. Apparently so, for the first 600,000, but they took it the rest of the way. They're a lot. I'm really happy to hear that. Okay. All right. You're somewhere in the county. Yes. Okay. Doodling around without. You'll see it. Necessary emergency. Probably 800,000. Now, they probably took the deck screws out. But I'm gonna guess they like
So, when I.
it made all the difference. Well, thank you for letting me know that. That means, as you know, it's more to me than others do think. That's a lot. 26 years I got that car, in 93, so it's,
The rest of.
was it 30 years old now? Yeah, it's 30 years old. I mean, just crazy.
So apparently there's some, assumption that the public thought we were going to. So, and, you know, the other one is suggest that we, but you know, there's still.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about it.
Comments.
Can you hear us? Yes.
We'll take it.
It's all garbled.
Well, yeah, people are, I just want to ask you that, yeah. A bunch of people are talking, so.
I couldn't understand what you were saying.
That's because a bunch of people are talking, but it's too far.
Yes. Okay. All right, and there's Paul. Okay. So my clock says 6:02 p.m. and we've got a quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Georgetown. It is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. First meeting of the new year, and let's start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, roll call is next. I am Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Rob Connell is not here. Deanne Powell.
Present.
Oh, let me get this thing. Which ones?
Here, let me, you gotta slide it to the top. I'll do
Okay,
it. All right, thank you for the reminder.
sure. John Jennings.
Here.
Paul Hinton
Here.
and Mary Smith
Here,
and Rich Barrow.
Here.
Great. Agenda approval. Does anybody have anything that needs to be added to the agenda?
I'd like to discuss having a time limit. So I've got such a garbled mess of paperwork here where we kept having one thing after another added on to the agenda. I'd like to have a deadline of, say, for example, Friday night, and then that gives us a couple days to go through the paperwork. I'd like that to be official or made official.
Okay, board packet. We'll put that under staff items.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to add anything? Yes, John.
What were we gonna do about the sales tax information that went out to everybody in the package? From Jamie.
I thought that was going to be under staff items as
Yeah.
well.
That's all I'm asking. That's just staff.
Yeah.
Well, we're just.
Anything else?
I would like to maybe introduce myself, I don't know what time or what, just to, introduce myself and what we're trying to do, if I can have a couple minutes for it all.
Actually, we'll get to audience business next.
Oh,
Right
sorry,
now-
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm new, so I'm so.
it's okay, no problem. So right now, we're just trying to approve the agenda.
Awesome.
Great.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So if that's all we need to add to the agenda, who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Looks like I'm making that motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second it.
Perfect.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, now, audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. And for anybody who is here to maybe talk about and give us their thoughts on the lodging tax, the board discussion was going to be in executive session. So if you've got comments that you wanted to make about the lodging tax, then we can do it under audience business. So, okay, go ahead. You were,
So I stand up or do I just?
Please. usually sound carries better. Yeah.
Okay, so,
First, introduce yourself,
my name is Han Nguyen.
and the camera is right behind you. So, yeah.
So my name is Han Nguyen. So recently my partners and I purchased the hotel family from Marie Claude. She has been struggling the last few years, COVID and the new micro center. She typically every month and can't survive. And so I approached her a few years ago when we first met. I drove by and I said, well, this is a beautiful place. And asked her if she would be interested in selling it. But she even told me that she goes, you know, if you run it as a hotel, you're not going to make money here. I used to do really well. I put a lot of work and passion into this hotel. And I don't know if you guys have all been there, but it's a gorgeous place. And so she said, you know, if you're going to get this place, kind of think outside the box. And so I sat and thought about a few different things. And I came up with the idea of, with a couple of partners of mine, opening up a women's drug and rehab clinic. And so I don't know if you guys know that, but on the western slope, there's a place called Jaywalker Ranch. I'm so sorry, thank you, Maria. And it's a facility. If you look at online, it's a really nice place by Carbondale. And it's an all men's drug and rehab place. And my brother's friend actually went there and they helped him and saved his life. And so we kind of got the idea from that saying, well, if there's a man, let's maybe open a women's place. And so I looked into it, I talked to, did a lot of research, and we hired some professionals that have been in this business and have been successful in helping people. And so not only my family members have been, gone through treatment, and then we've also got some friends that have passed from overdose and different things. So, so anyway, we want to open and make that hotel into a upscale, women's, just for women, therapy clinic, kind of like a better clinic. But it's not going to be a walk-in type of place. You have to have reservations and you have to qualify. And so, and it's not going to be any kind of deep talk place as well. This is strictly just therapy. It's going to be in a secure area, 24-hour supervision, and they have to pass a background check and everything else. But from what we hear, there's just a shortage right now in town here. There's just big waiting list for people just to get in a place like this. The reason why we're doing this in the mountains here is because kind of the same thing, our copycat with the J Walker Ranch. Their main thing is having activities. So when people come to our center, our rehab clinic, we want them before they come. We're gonna say, there's, you know, if you're a skier, if you like to fish, if you like to canoe, horseback riding, snowmobile, all those things, those are the people we want, because we want to get them back into love and life again. And why not better than George? How beautiful it is! You're surrounded by mountains, minutes from ski resorts. So that's what we're trying to do: fly fishing, different things like that. And so, if you guys ever have any questions, I would recommend calling Carbondale and asking if there's been any trouble, this and that, and you'll find that there's been really nothing. A lot of people like that they're there, and I think when we come here, we're still running as a hotel right now because we're trying to put our pieces together. But we're going to put about $100,000 into it to just clean it up a little bit, changing some carpet, make it really look nice. But again, it's not a walk-in clinic, it's not a detox, and it's not a halfway house for sure. But it's for women, and they're not criminals. These are your sisters, your mother, your daughter, and we're just trying to put pieces together to open that up. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're gonna be open for the next, 3-4 months. So if you guys have any questions or any concerns or anything, feel free to come down and talk to us. But we would love your support. We think it'd be good for the town. And again, we like to build of it. We like how beautiful and all the time and effort that we put into it. So we're gonna keep it up as well. But we're gonna have it pretty secure. It's gonna be a beautiful place to help. But this is gonna definitely help people, and I hope we can get your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's something on the short term rental.
Okay.
Yeah. Camera up there. I'm Neil Duncan, and I live at 2001 22nd Street, the old Granger house. So the short-term rental issue, I think I'll go back first to the ballot measure. The explanatory statement in the ballot measure, clearly it's a tax for the town. However, the comments in that ballot packet described it as a substitute for the county tax. I guess one question I would have is, did the county voters authorize rescinding of that tax to give it to Georgetown? So I think there's a question about the ballot measure itself and how it was written, and the comment to the ballot measure, although it may not have legal weight, the comments, but who drafted those comments and provided those in the ballot packet? Because they are misleading the way we're trying to implement the tax now. So as a short-term rental owner, we're really caught in the middle. We're very supportive of moving the taxes to the local jurisdiction of Georgetown, but we have a situation now where the county wants to collect their lodging tax. Georgetown wants to collect the services tax on lodging, or tax on lodging services. So implementation of this is going to be very difficult. We have talked to, and we do 100% of our rentals through Airbnb and VRBO. So we have open cases with these agencies, and on Airbnb, there may be a way to collect the tax. remit it to us, and then we remit it to Georgetown and file a return on any new bookings. With VRBO, it's impossible. So they recognize only the state of Colorado Department of Revenue as the tax collection agent, which then gives it to the county and distributes tax to the state. So I don't know how to solve this problem. So I think it needs to be, we need to think of how, I'm happy to have the taxes accrue for a while until we get this sorted out, but I don't think that the short-term rental owners should be penalized while this issue gets sorted out between the town and the county.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's my comment.
Okay, yes, and yeah, we're hearing a lot of confusion from the community, and that's why we're going to be discussing it in executive session to try and sort it out and figure out who gets to do what and how do we smooth this down. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Anyone else for public comments?
Lynette?
Yes.
I might just tell this board, because I know some of you have followed this, that the town of Silver Plum was able to raise sufficient funds to buy Brown Gulch and the whole swath of 200 acres on Republican Mountain. So if you look at the map over ahead there, that purple will now extend to the north side of Silver Plum. It adds to the historic district public lands, of which the town of Georgetown is a member. The closing will be on January 30th.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, that is awesome. Okay. 1:30, excellent. Is that going to be on Zoom? Do you know?
What?
Well, or is there a ceremony or?
It's a party. Well, we're gonna invite you.
Okay. Okay, very good, very good. All right, anyone else for public comment tonight? Okay, very good, thank you. Next we have the payables. And the payables that we have before us tonight are from December 23rd, 2022 through January 5th, 2023. Any questions on the payables?
I move to accept the payables dated December 23rd, 2022 through January 5th, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Next, we have the minutes from our last meeting, which was on December 27th, 2022. Any comments or corrections to those minutes? Yes,
I have several. I just need to find them because again, so many mishmash of paperwork. Okay. If somebody else has comments, go with them. I'm still looking for the notes.
Okay. Did anyone else have any comments or corrections? I had a couple that I've already given to Jennifer. First of all, to add Jerry Dahl under staff, because he was at our meeting last time. And then, Jennifer, did you check the recording on the motion for the solar MOU?
Oh, yeah, you were right.
Okay. So the motion for the solar memorandum of understanding should have included approval of the MOU with the designation of the Georgetown Community School and Georgetown Community Center as the two nonprofits. And those were the only two that I had.
Okay.
Okay.
On page 2, under, item 2, fee scheduling, I'd like it to specify when Mary Sims sent out the letters to the lodging service owners to let them know about the new taxes.
Okay,
I think that could be important. And also under staff items, there are about 5 other things that should be included there, like that the water testing unit needs to be replaced, and people who fell through the ice, and we're gonna put up, warnings and stuff. And that Buckley's doing the bridge work on 23rd Street, and also that we're gonna schedule the meeting with Jonah Goose's representative for some time in February or March. All of that, it happened under staff items and before the election schedule, and none of it's included, and it should be.
okay.
I mean, I agree with I can add the water testing unit and the people falling in the lake. And Buckley 22nd Street. I didn't say when we were scheduling the work session because it wasn't really defined yet.
It's still something we discussed under staff items, so
Well,
it
we're
can be
just,
left up in the air, but it should be mentioned.
all right. It has not been scheduled yet, so, okay. Anything else? Okay,
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 27th, 2022 as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
As amended.
Okay. And any opposed? No, great. Okay, new business. First thing we have is resolution number 1, series 2023. A resolution of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Georgetown, Colorado, designating public places for the posting of notices concerning town of Georgetown public meetings. So this is something that we do every year, first thing. Anything to add?
No, I guess I would say that I've had a conversation with Marv and with Craig, and there's some opposition. There are some things that they wanted to clarify as as we move forward with this side, but there's some things that they wanted to add. So because it's
I think you're on the wrong
oh,
item.
I'm sorry.
We're on the designation of public notice places.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Anything you want to add, Jerry?
Nope.
Okay.
Standard once a year.
Okay,
Looks like Deanne has waited on me.
yes, yep, thank
Okay.
you.
When we discussed this, I brought up that we need to have someplace up further north where it'll be, most of our population is to the north. And both of these sited spots are within 2 blocks of each other and only down here on the south end. We need to make it convenient for people. And granted, the post office, everybody goes to at least once a week. However, I would really like to see a notice place established further up to the other end of town so that it's easier. I have no idea what would be the appropriate place. I'm thinking like it has to be someplace where lots of us go to. And I don't know where that is. So, but I think there should be another place added to this.
Yeah, I think the problem is there's really not a public place without infringing on someone's business and day-to-day operations. And it does include that it could be posted in other places, but we would be imposing on a private business for that to happen. I mean, I understand.
Which it's never been a problem before. We've always been a community who pulled together, and there were always notices at the market, tacked up on that one end where they have the little tables in the library. It's always been, I'll call it good neighbor stuff that went on. And it just seems like we should be trying to touch as many people as we can. Too many people have no idea what's going on with the town government. You know, we need to try to let it be known what we have going on.
Deanne, I do remember you bringing this up last year when we dealt with this issue, and I haven't come up with any place on that end of town that would be appropriate. And I think the two physical places, the post office and town hall and our website, are the appropriate official notice places. And this doesn't mean that notices can't be put in other spots. It just means that these are the official places. And, you know, I have not come up with any appropriate alternate at the far end of town at the north end. So I think for this year, at least, again, I think we go with what has been working as best as we can. Any other comments? Any comments from you, Paul? Okay, thank you. All right, any questions about the resolution? Okay. Who would like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve resolution number 1, series 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 1, series 2023. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I think I have to vote as opposed just because I really do think this is an important issue. We need to reach as many people as we can.
Okay. Agenda item number 2 is ordinance number 5, series 2022. This is a second reading and public hearing. An ordinance amending the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning maximum lot and building sizes for the historic residential zone district and concerning code amendments related thereto. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. It is 6:26 p.m. And Jerry, do you want? Rick's going to start us off.
Yeah, and so I jumped the gun earlier, so I apologize. This is an ordinance that has been in the works for a while. I would say back to July 20th. We have had discussions from boards back and forth, from Planning Commission to DRC, and some of these meetings I was not able to attend. Some of these Martin was not able to attend, and so it went back and forth to the point where we had a conglomeration of the boards making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen in the shape of ordinance number 5, and it began to clarify some language in the historic residential. Because this is an open public meeting, you know, the public has a right to comment. And so in the midst of this, I've had a meeting with Marvin and Craig to discuss opposition and some of the things that have some conflict with. And so I have heard and reviewed many of the things that they presented to me. And I think it'd be wise to hear some of their issues that they have with this. And then we can come back and talk about it, and then like to hear Jerry's suggestions of what to do. Where do we go from here? So anyways, that's where we are. We have spent from July 20th until recently and lots of discussion. So anyways, that's our report.
Okay. All right. Marv or Craig? Who would like that? All right, very good.
Talk fast.
I'm Craig Abrahamson, 815 Main Street. I also represent, so I live here. And I also represent Mark Geisers in Washington Mill site. The project you all know is the Washington Mill, over on Main Street.
You're 917 Second Street.
So I wrote down most of my comments so that you guys can peruse it a little bit and I don't have to go through the tables and data and all of that stuff in too much detail. But so I'll read from this. You can read along if you'd like to, or you can just enjoy all the numbers. Simply stated, this ordinance has been created with limited stakeholder feedback and from a biased
And
perspective.
could you please speak slower? The sound is already poor, and when you speak quickly, it mumbles all together and I can't understand you.
Simply stated, this ordinance has been created with limited stakeholder feedback and from the biased perspective of a couple of particular planning commission and design review commission members. It was rushed through in response to a particular set of circumstances without fully considering how it relates to the existing built environment of the historic residential district, much less what impacts it will have on any future construction in that district. As it stands now, this ordinance will all but halt construction of new homes or alteration of existing homes in a manner that meets the needs and expectations of both young families and those who wish to age in place in the historic residential district. Further, it will essentially eliminate the option to account for accessory dwelling units in single-family homes, which will further impact our already desperate, attainable, and workforce housing challenges. At times during the development of this ordinance, evidence has been presented to the Planning Commission and the DRC by their own members of existing structures that comply with this ordinance and those that do not. The examples used of those that do not were all taken from the same current development project, and those that do are all located on extraordinarily large lots. None of the quote good examples are on the size of lots that will most detrimentally impacted by this ordinance. Below there's a table. I apologize, I don't have an electronic copy for you guys. With our own sampling of existing largely historic homes that do not comply with this ordinance. And they include addresses that you're probably familiar with. I know those in the room are 710 Rose, 709 3rd, 300 Rose, and 615 2nd Street. Many of those, the structures in this list, in fact, all but one of them, are contributing structures to the National Historic Landmark District. And those structures would be deemed essentially non-compliant, legal non-conforming structures if this ordinance passes. Anyone who's familiar with historic residential districts will recognize these houses would never think they're examples of what not to do. As further evidence of how unaware the Planning Commission and DRC members are of the impacts of this ordinance, 3 of the houses in the above sample, the table you have provided to you, are in fact owned by DRC or Planning Commission members. During one meeting on the topic where both Planning Commission and DRC were present, staff raised the question of having stakeholder involvement in the development of the ordinance before it was passed along the Board of Selectmen. In response, one DRC member said, quote, they, meaning the stakeholders, are all in this room. The only people in that room was staff, DRC, and Planning Commission members. Another suggests that because there are 3 contractors between the 2 commissions that represent stakeholder input. And a Planning Commission member stated, quote, this is such a small piece of the ordinance that it doesn't need to be a big public hoo-ha. When government adopts an ordinance, they create law. The creation of law is generally considered a serious matter that justifies public notice and involvement. This is particularly true when it comes to land use matters, and in particular those that are pertaining to private property rights. This is why we have a robust public process when we do things like rezonings and subdivisions. This process was anything but transparent, as evidenced by the attached timeline. The impetus for the ordinance has its origins at the July 2022 Planning Commission meeting where a particular member of the Planning Commission was upset that the Planning Commission could not restrict the size of a proposed single-family residence. The DRC and Planning Commission will argue that the topic was posted on numerous agendas for both entities. However, this is misleading. Anytime the topic was posted on a public agenda before November 16th, it was referred to as either, quote, land use code potential updates, quote, lot size regulations, or, quote, maximum lot size amendments to the historic residential district. There's no mention of restricting building sizes on any of those agendas until November 16th. You'll notice that over the course of 4 months, to make matters worse, proper public notice of at least 2 meetings was not provided. 3 members of the Design Review Commission attended the September 21st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. However, no DRC meeting for that day was ever posted, which is a violation of the town's posting requirements as well as Colorado open meetings law. Then again, on November 2nd, 2022, the planning commission and DRC held a joint meeting, which was never posted on the website for either body, representing a second violation, of course, of the development of this ordinance. This is relevant because we believe the Board of Selectmen has relied on testimony and information provided to them from those bodies in their consideration of the ordinance, and by any reasonable measure, the public has not been heard on this issue because they have not received the proper notice that their input is desired. Thank you.
Thank you. Marvin, did you have anything to add?
I think there are two Roman numerals here. Number one is what Greg has principally talked about, and that's process. We think that there has not been a transparent discussion with the public, the community. We are probably the most affected in this district. We can only count maybe a half a dozen lots that this really will affect that are not currently developed. I happen to own 3 of them, and it would have been, I think, a matter of courtesy, if not a requirement, that at least somehow or the other we were given notice that this was coming up and have a chance to express our opinion. There are a number of other things in the process that we can talk about. And takings, the lack of notice, lack of transparency, before we get to Roman numeral 2 of what the consequences of this will be. My architect, a well-known one in town, a very competent, extremely competent one, tells me that the only thing he can design on my 3 undeveloped lots is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. The bedrooms would have to be on the 2nd floor, and that precludes young family. It precludes anyone who wants to age in place with a bedroom on the main floor. And those houses, quite honestly, will become rentals. That's not what we all want here. We have a problem of soliciting people to be on public bodies. A rental person is not qualified. We also, in my particular case with the 3 lots, what I can build, therefore, would not be consistent with the existing neighborhood that is past 2 years. So we just ask that there be a lot more attention paid to what this really means, what this ordinance, the consequences of it, and not take hasty action.
Okay, thank you.
You have public comment?
Would
Yeah,
I,
I can say something considering that I'm the chairman of the planning commission.
okay,
And how
why don't introduce yourself?
Dwayne Sitzky, chairman of the planning.
I recognize you, but
Yeah.
everybody might not.
Sorry, one, I apologize to Marvin and Craig, and it seems when we try to take action and stuff to make stuff better, nobody ever comes out. And I always tell people, get involved the best that you can. How people are notified, what they're aware of, how they pay attention to stuff, and how it gets changed. These guys are probably most effective because most of the planning commissions over the past year have involved them. My intentions wasn't to single out any one person. It's we have an issue when it comes to lot size, the size of the houses and such, and what fits. Working with DRC on some other issues that we had, and how to figure out a solution to that. One, for non-conforming lots, at 3,750 square foot. To build a big house and knows that A, does it fit historic or doesn't it? Seems to be an issue that it doesn't, based on what's provided. As far as cost and stuff and need, that's the other situation. You know, do we need bigger houses? Can people afford bigger houses? Can they afford smaller houses? Well, I'm not the person to say, hey, this is what something should or shouldn't cost. We put a lot of thought and process into each one and how it fits. If you want a bigger house, you can combine 2 lots. If you have 2 non-conforming lots, it gives you a 7,000 square foot lot plus, which gives you 3,000 square foot of buildable space. Plus you could add a garage for that. If you take a 5,000 square foot lot, which is what fits a conforming lot, it gives you a 1,500 square foot house, which You know, people can use the different houses that are around. I know what I can get out of that house and what size the house that is. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, comfortable house within a better price range of what fits this town and where we're at, but not where we're headed. I've got land that I own in town that's not in historic. So does that create a conflict? Maybe it does. If I had land in historic, would I look at it different? No. But that's because I want to get out of it, which maybe makes it personal. Starting to understand what the historical meaning is in this town and how I see it and how cities explain to me, it's this fit. But then it doesn't fit for everybody. And that's where I'd like to have city kind of explain the historic values of that. Craig's lived here his whole life, so I value what he has to say too. If it's based off of a look, if it's based off of size, we have small houses, all houses will always sell. It's just what person you're fit. You know, do they become rental? It's possible. We can't, when a house gets built, we can't decide on who buys it. But could it benefit that family that wants to live here and provide kids to our school? Sure, a 2-bedroom house does that. People are living in 500 square foot apartments right now, paying way more than what they would for a house. If you base it on the value of the house, you're going right $400 a square foot. You know, you're probably going to push 500,000. You're probably going to push a little bit more per square foot on that 1,000 square foot house. But also too, how many non-conforming lots are left in this town? We discussed that at Planning Commission sometime in the last year. Some areas won't even let you build on a non-conforming lot. You know, so then they just end up in endless vacant lots, or people have to combine the lots and build a house that fits. I don't see how this changes it that much, depending on the size that you have, but I don't know the lots that Marv owns and or what he's wanting to build on them. Because even if it passes, you still can get variances to build a bigger size depending on where it's at and how it affects the historic values of that. So I mean, that being said, we didn't just guess at this. We put a lot of process and went back and forth on what we really wanted. One last thing on a very small scale on a non-conforming lot. If you can do 1,000 square foot on a 3,750 square foot lot, if you can put a basement in, that adds another 1,000 square foot. So a family that can barely afford to build a house here can still get a 2,000 square foot house on one lot if they can put a basement in. You know, and that doesn't consider a walkout because then that changes how it looks. But yeah, I mean, that being said, it's tough. I don't know how the process is as far as public notice, you know, how the word gets out. You know, if everybody's notified that it's supposed to be or not. It's a shame if it wasn't, because we would have loved to have more people at our meetings to give their opinion there when we're discussing this. And we did go around and we battled back and forth on what we truly felt fit. But that's kind of all I had to say. So sorry if I talk too much and whatnot.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Yes, Cindy.
So, and I guess, I would say.
Speak up if you could, please.
Cindy Mary, and at this point, I'm representing the Design Review Commission. I, on the process item, my understanding was that every meeting that was held was posted. And then they were at the two commissions met together. But we met twice at a regularly scheduled DRC meeting, and we met once at a regularly scheduled planning meeting. So no, I have not gone back to all of those dates. It didn't because I didn't know that was the issue at hand, or I would have gone back towards all of those things. Because it had never been the attempt. I mean, DRC's been in. The DRC in some form has been in business for 50 years. I mean, we've sort of gotten accustomed to the fact that we have to put out proper notice. And so I'm a little bit bothered by the sort of saying that it was not proper notice, because that's not the way it would have done business. I would point out that part of this comes from the guidelines that have been passed for years, and if I may read out of the guidelines for the historic residential district. It says the mass and size of buildings in Georgetown are among the elements that have the greatest influence on compatible construction in the community. The height, the width, and depth of a new building should be compatible with historic buildings in the community at large within the historic residential character area. And especially with those structures that are immediately adjacent to new buildings. The size of the building should also relate to its lot size and placement on the lot. A limited mix of small and large building sizes exist in the historic residential character area. Even on larger lots where larger buildings occur, the traditional building sizes is preserved. Yes, we have a variety of sizes. And one of the things that was also says in italics, this established size should be maintained. Under the new construction, they say residences in this character area are from 1 and 2 stories, but are typically 1.5 stories. We have more 1.5 story houses. And the tradition of the 1 to 2 story street facades should be continued. And I would certainly say that the Washington Mills site has continued that. But breaking up the large buildings with small buildings is the nature and pattern of building in our town. It indicates that new construction, this is one of our guidelines, and we don't do it, but I think we're certainly going to begin to, or we haven't been, because we haven't recognized, in a sense, you haven't recognized the problem. Residential in residential development or new residences in the historic district. This is 11th Street South, just 11th Street South. It's not the middle side, it is not the Meadows. There have been, they would come to us one at a time. So we would have one down by 11th Street, one up there. So when you're handling them one at a time, you are looking at one structure and its impact. One of the reasons this came up was because Washington Mill site was built out with 6 of them all together, which gave you the sense and the appearance of what it looked like to have the larger structures, the larger square foot living area structures close together in one place. Because while we say there's only a couple of lots left to develop, there are far more than that actually, because there are many houses. If you take the Presbyterian Manse, for example, on the corner of 10th and Taos, there are 3 extra lots that the Presbyterians can sell off at any time they want. You know, so that 3 extra houses do go right around that. And do we want the houses of the size that are currently at Washington Mill site on those lots? Probably not, you know, who knows, but you haven't seen the development of it. So I think what this looks at is saying, okay, if you do have the larger lots, then and you are willing to use that whole lot, then put your larger house on it. But if we do have the smaller lots, we want to maintain that we are also building smaller houses. And I know Craig has said to me that, you know, that absolutely, and people want to age in place. Well, having joined the octogenarian crowd in this town, in my little 1,500 square foot house, I would tell you that it's not really, I would like to downsize, which I find that most of the folks in this exclusive club, if that's what we're saying to each other, is we don't want bigger houses. At this moment, we want smaller ones. And we worked hard on this. I think that the Dwayne does make the point that we do not guess at this figure. We've had professional help discussing this figure. when young, at that point, the professional planner was with us. We went through any number of lots. There are some very large homes that are relatively new in the historic district, which fit into their 0.3 very easily. If you do really gives residents up there, he sits on a big lot. His house is perfectly fine. If he took Marvin's, he sits on a big lot. His house would be perfectly fine on a 0.3. So it relates the size of the house to the size of the lot. And that's what we're trying to do. And so I would urge the board to continue to give consideration to this ordinance. Let us work with it. Let us see how it works. And it is true that any person who feels that they are not adequately treated by it can go and seek an adjustment to it. And my understanding, and maybe Jerry can fill this out, is that area and bulk regulations, to begin with, are maximums. They, in general, it's a maximum height. It is a maximum coverage. They are in general maximums. And I think what our guidelines have said to us, that there may be times and places, given the size of the lots, that you don't want that maximum. And if we're going to consider floor area ratio, it should be in our bulk regulations. So that somebody's not showing up in front of the DRC, we say, we're saying, look, your floor area ratio is too great, but they don't have any warning that that's even on the table. And so I would encourage you to appoint your commissions to try to do the best to preserve the historic area and preserve the overall look of it. And I would encourage you to support that. I don't know whether my fellow folks want to say anything, but
I'll just say one quick thing.
State your name again. Thank you.
2001 22nd Street. History is, history moves. I mean, what is historical, I don't think can be really defined, because there are several houses on different lot sizes here in town that all looks good together. There are existing regulations on setbacks. There's a process for exceptions to those regulations on setbacks. The less specific we dictate, the better off people will be.
okay.
I spent 15 years in a centrally planned economy with the Soviet Union that had come out of the 70 years of communism. Saw what that did to it. We don't want that in Georgetown. We want to have some freedoms to do it. And there are existing regulations covering.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to, this is Bob Hamilton, I'm a member of the DRC. And my recollection on how this started, there was concern about a particular property that came before the planning commission. And I think the DRC had already seen plans for the house. And that kind of, there was a question on size and so, but anyway, that was the catalyst for bringing this forward. The DRC is chartered and responsible for guiding the development in town per the guidelines that have been established and approved years ago. We have various tools available. A lot of them are in the guidelines that allow us to do that. They give us the boundaries. This whole issue came up because of the historic nature of this historic district, this area we were talking, 11th to the side. It was determined two things. We really needed more tools to work with in assessing new development on property. One was relative to size. The other was, should the DRC be looking at something that may or may not fit all the criteria for size on a given lot, more of a zoning or planning commission standpoint. So this proposed new code is intended to address, giving us more tools to address size so that we can properly fit structure onto an existing piece of property. And also that any zoning, any kind of issues that are not DRC specific are resolved prior to the DRC getting involved. That way we're not influencing by looking at something that you may or may not be able to build because of other impacts. The DRC is not, so yeah, this looks good as long as you take care of this and take care of that, which really we have no authority. So that's what this whole, this whole amendment to the code is about, is to address those issues. Give us additional tools that allow us to determine whether something fits on a lot or not, and put it in the right sequence so that your zoning and planning issues are resolved before it comes to the DRC, so that we don't influence decisions in those areas. And that's kind of some of the additional background on how we got to where we are.
I can say one more thing too, sorry.
Okay,
Kind of answer Mr. Chairman's question. You have code and typically that's created on what best fits your town. Obviously, as a town like
Is
Georgetown.
this?
Sorry,
Who are you?
Wayne Zinsky again.
Thank you.
Well, so typically as a town grows, you amend code, you add code to what fits what's being created in that town. We want to find you saying, oh, hey, I want to be able to build anything I want anywhere that I want. That just doesn't happen, even in America. We're not trying to take away people's rights, etc. But as Bob had stated, what got us to this was this. We had a situation where we let 3 lots be separated into non-conforming lots. And then now that's been a struggle with DRC because people want to build to the max that they possibly can. And then that kind of doesn't fit a store. On the other side, we've taken a lot that was 4 separate lots. We let it be divided into 1, and they built probably half the size of what they could have, which, that benefited and it worked for what was trying to be created. What we're trying to do is tighten it up so that we're not pushed. I feel like we pushed from DRC to planning commission to go, we have to approve this, or that we're not pushing it. We're actually trying to make it easier so that when people come in, they go, okay, if I buy this lot right here, I know what I can build. Because people don't have a clue when they come, like, oh, I bought this lot and now I can't build on it because it's a non-conforming lot. It doesn't meet at least the bare minimum. For the people that kind of get stuck, that are in that in between, that are already designing stuff that don't have a permit, I don't know the best process for that. It kind of popped up that once this goes in, that you have to do that, and that's stuff can be amended. But long term, and it doesn't affect what's kind of being built right now. Like Cindy had said, we're looking at more of the lots. There's a lot of lots around the storage area that could be sold at any given time. That's not what's being built now. Everybody seems to be happy with that. We're not trying to single out anybody. But that's kind of why I added. It's, I can design a new subdivision out in the country. It's going to have its codes. We're going to say, hey, this is what you can do in there now. That's everywhere. If I look at buying a lot someplace, I don't go, oh, well, I want to live in Georgetown. I'm going to build, a house that I like. We all have to fit into those different areas. Typically, no matter where you build, you're not going to build in an area where the houses are 5,000 square foot, build a 1,000 square foot house, and vice versa. Unless you're in Georgetown and you have historic Georgetown, that's what makes this town so unique. You can kind of get all of it. If this town was all 3,000 square foot houses, well, probably most of us wouldn't live here. And our maybe vice versa too. I think that's kind of all I have to say. It's just, we're not trying to single out any one person. We're trying to really theoretically do what's best long term for historic Georgetown.
thank you. Yes, Cindy.
Cindy Newey, and when somebody said, it does not matter that the chairman of the planning commission also builds houses. I mean, the chairman of the DRC also builds houses. I mean, they obviously feel that this is something that they could work with. And so if we're not trying to go after the house development industry, we're not trying to limit the building of houses. We're trying to get the right size on the right level.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment to make? Okay,
Can I just?
Yes,
have
yes,
a
sir.
Postscript, because I was involved with the issue that's most recently emerged here. We went to DRC with our project first, but the approval, the COA that we got, I viewed as being conditional on our meeting that we were having in the planning to combine two lots. And I'm in total agreement that the process should be changed to go to planning first. But the argument is that as it currently exists, planning should not be getting into the design question at the time that they're approving the lot elimination. So that's my only, I would have reversed it. I have no problem with that, but don't charge planning with looking at what is the purview of DRC if that changes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that in that measure, we are all in agreement that right now the code says that you have to check with the DRC has to send an opinion to planning. But what the DRC had been doing was doing more than an opinion to planning, and we need to not do that.
I just want to underscore, if you pass this, you're not allowing building of properties that are in current demand by young families. That you just can't do it. The numbers don't work out. They just simply do not work out.
Okay.
Other buildings don't agree with that.
Okay. So is there anybody online that is here for and might want to do a public comment?
Who is Craig Abrahamson? Let me get him out as a panelist.
No, no, the wants to talk. Question.
We also have Smokey Anderson. I can promote him. I don't know if he wants to talk or not. Okay, if I put a note out that if somebody does want to speak, to type their name into the chat,
Okay,
and that's how we would know to promote them, but nobody did that.
okay,
So you don't think he wants to? Okay. Smokey, if you do want to comment, type your name into the chat, please.
okay.
I would like to comment when it's appropriate about the posting.
Okay, hang on. Yes, Betsy? Okay,
So I.
tell us your name first,
My name is
please.
Steve Blakeslee. I live at 200 Rose. Yeah, I used to live at 300.
Okay.
So.
I couldn't hear any of that. Please restate who you are.
My name is Betsy Blakeslee, and I live on Rose Street in one of the historic homes that was built in 1876. So when I was hearing this conversation from the beginning, it seemed to me it broke down into two areas. One was a lot of anger that somehow people hadn't got the message that they could be at the meetings and contribute and talk about their feelings about this, etc. So it seems to me that you're dealing with the posting issue. You were dealing with the posting issue earlier. and how we get information out. But for people who are going to be vitally interested in something like this, there is a responsibility as a citizen to be tracking what's going to be coming up in these various meetings, because it could be something that pertains to something that is very important to you individually. So I just found it interesting that there seemed to be so much negative energy toward the commissions in this, as if there was some sort of a secretive cabal that had been established to push this through. And you know, I'm fairly new on the commission. I've never had anybody say anything to me about, let's go as fast as we can and make sure people don't talk to us, but you know, that isn't who we are. So we're extremely open to feedback. Now we're getting feedback at this stage of the process. And the other thing that I heard in the commentary was something about this being a communist effort. In other words, we are somehow being compared to Putin, okay, who unilaterally invades Ukraine. Okay, I can assure you that isn't us. Okay, but I can see where people might have a sense of, oh my God, I didn't know this was happening. I didn't get to input, etc., etc. So seems to me it reflects a greater cultural issue in America, right? I have my rights and your rights don't count. That isn't who we are, and I just want to emphasize that we would love and would have loved to have had input. Now, the one question I can't quite wrap my head around, if somebody could help me understand, what I'm hearing is, I'm an individual, or there are individuals who have large lots or have lots and want to build really big structures on them. And you should let me build any size structure on that I want. And it should not have to follow any guidelines. So the first house I bought in Georgetown was 1982, when my husband was a doctor at the Army Hospital downtown. And of course, the entire appeal of Georgetown versus Vail and Breckenridge and all the rest of it is that this has been a community that has tried really hard together to maintain a historic sense. And so, and when I came back, when my husband was retiring after 26 years in the military, and I said, I'm retiring in Georgetown. I'm not sure where you're going to retire, but that's where I'm going to be. So after 52 years of marriage, you know, come ahead if you like. And we came back to look for houses here, and I thought, I'm going to be so crushed if I drive into Georgetown. And it's substantially different. It's been wrecked. And we drove in, and it wasn't wrecked. I mean, it was Georgetown. It was incredible. So my feeling about being on the Design Review Commission is there isn't a bunch of people who are trying to impose some dictatorial kind of construct. It's people who are desperately wanting to make sure that guidelines are applied evenly. And in this case, we've got an issue. I am appalled at what my house has recently been evaluated. I mean, this is a big problem, which is massive increase in the value of properties to the point where you're attracting a whole group of people who may want to build a house that's too big on a lot. And yet, what I love about Georgetown is the dedication of people to the love of the community to actually have these conversations. And to say, wow, is there some way we can structure this so that we maintain the historic character of the town, which very few towns in the world have, in America have been able to do. Without making certain individuals really angry. Because it's my understanding, I mean, we've been building some rather bigger houses in different locations. But there are just certain locations that aren't going to be able to do that because we want to support a bigger message about conservation. And it takes a town with a lot of people, with a lot of guts to keep that and not turn into something else. That's just.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else for public comment? I appreciate everyone's comments. I'm very glad everybody came and expressed themselves so well. Thank you. I am going to, if there's no further public comment, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:09. And open it up for board discussion. And I think, Jerry, do you have something to share with us right off? Or
Well, I can just comment a little bit on process.
Okay.
Like Marv and like Betsy, I'm a process guy. You know, and I don't have an opinion and shouldn't and never do on the actual policy. That's not, you know, it's not my job. It's yours, lucky you. But you know, I'll remind us around all this notice stuff. This is legislation. This is not a rezoning or special use permit on an individual property. There's a huge difference. And the notice requirement for legislation are that you post notice under the open meetings law that you're going to have a meeting and you list the agenda topics. It sometimes happens that this board takes up legislation at a meeting that the meeting was open, but you ended up deciding you needed to legislate that night, and you can. The General Assembly, and I hate to compare ourselves to Colorado General Assembly, but you know, their rule is they run a bill and it's called concerning elections. Okay. And that's, you know, that covers a wide range of things. Here, what I'm trying to say is I heard Marv and I heard the state, Craig, thank you. Sorry. Say, gee, you didn't, you know, we weren't really sure this was what you were going to deal with. And I will tell you that the rules are pretty relaxed about legislation. And I make a big distinction between that. When Marv comes in, for example, for a specific rezoning or parcel property, then that gets noticed out to the people that are affected and they get actual notice mailed to them. In legislation, you don't get notice mailed to you. You just don't. And that's just true. Now, having said that, I absolutely agree. It's a small community. You want to make sure everybody knows as much as you can what's going on. It is a small community. People usually know what is happening. And I'll say that the obligation to post the notice under the open meetings law is true. The information we have is that those notices are posted. Sometimes it gets listed in minutes, sometimes it doesn't. But the rule is that if that's your regular procedure, the rule is that we assume that was followed, and you try to assume the best for people, that they're not trying to hide the notice. All of that may be less important than, okay, well, what about now? You know, really. And as usual, I think for the board, there's one other comment, I guess, and that's, it's not a taking of property to do legislation. It just isn't. And I get that said to me all the time, and has been said to me in my long local government career. And it's not a taking of property if you're left with some economic use of it. That's just true. I hear takings a lot, but that is not something that should blow you off the dime on this ordinance or any other. Having said that, from a process standpoint, you certainly have the ability to hear more from people if you feel that you haven't heard enough, or if you feel that people, for whatever reason, You did your best, you thought, but for whatever reason, people feel like you haven't heard enough, or it hasn't been thought about enough. You have absolutely that right, and it won't surprise you to hear there may be 3 doors here. You know, I know. Levity, I try hard. I try hard to make it. But you know, obviously, you can act tonight and say yes, and see how it plays. And as people have projects that they think aren't being addressed appropriately, you know, there is some room for variances. It's not what I'd like. I think if I were Marv, I'd want not to have to apply for one. I get that. I appreciate that. That's one door. Door number 2 is you can say no to this ordinance, and it sort of stops. Door number 3 is you can say, we would like to hear more. And there's always the opportunity to say, we've closed the hearing. We're not going to act on second read tonight. I'm going to continue it and ask for additional input in whatever way you like. It would seem to me, if that's true, then rather than just saying, okay, well, we'll wait to hear from people, I would challenge people, and I challenge Marv and Craig and others to say, write down actually what you think it ought to say. You know, do the hard work of drafting. That's the hard work. But so that's sort of your third door, and it always is true. You can either say yes, no, or you can wait. And waiting might be what you want to do tonight or not. You've heard from a lot of people, but some of them have said, we don't think you heard from us enough or in a timely way. That's the one point I guess I'd make on the ordinance itself. And I think it was even mentioned by Marvin and by Cindy, maybe, was this business about role clarity between the DRC and the Planning Commission. And I think everybody understands that has been a problem that we ought to wrestle with. And I really support that. Section 2 of the ordinance actually starts to get to that. And I think it was a point Marv made, and I appreciate him making it, that, you know, a COA does not get issued by DRC until Planning Commission's approved. So that, so the ordinance is making some good headway, at least on that topic, to address something I think has irritated people. That's what I got.
Okay. All right. Comments from the board.
I like door number 3. I'd like to hear more, find out more, so I can make a knowledgeable vote one way or the other, or make it even knowledgeable suggestions. So we've gotten some more information here. I'd talk to folks at the 2 commissions, and then I think I could probably make a better determination.
I agree. I think we have, there's no drop dead date here. And there's time to continue to look into it and get some of these other issues resolved. I guess I'd like to see more of the whole package of the ordinance changes, perhaps. I know we are looking at a lot of them. It's time is coming up, and we reviewed a few. And, you know, one of the issues that you brought up, Mark, was, you know, the plan versus DRC, who sees what first and who can do what first. And that seems to be part of this issue. Exactly. And, you know, so maybe if we have more of the entire picture and can see that, that would be helpful.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. Deanne, you had your hand up.
I think we all need to keep in mind that Georgetown is really special. Like Betsy Blakesley was saying, it's unique, and we have managed to, over the onslaught of years, kept integrity, kept historical values, kept the character nice. If somebody wants to build a humongous huge house, far out, do it someplace else. In Ward 1, the historic area, we need to jealously and zealously guard keeping it as close to what it was anytime, you know, like 1880, 1925. It doesn't matter what year you pick. The charm of Georgetown is that we have kept here quaint. And if we allow all these exceptions, and get the DRC and the Planning Commission fighting against each other, because I went to one of the meetings that these guys claim they missed, and heard how various projects, more than one, had presented something at DRC and then gone to Planning Commission and claimed that DRC had already okayed it. And so then Planning Commission's feeling pressure to be in sync with DRC. This clarifies what's going on. It doesn't stop anybody from doing anything, but I really feel like we need to be real careful. We are at a crux right now, and too many big houses in the historic district screw up the feel of the historic district. It needs to be, again, jealously and zealously guarded. And I would like to go ahead and vote yes on it tonight.
Okay. Paul?
I was feeling the same way as Rich and Mary. For whatever reason, I just feel a little bit out of the loop on this. I'm not understanding this 100%.
Your sound just diminished.
Can you hear me? It's not on mute.
No, but you started out louder and then it got softer. I'm not sure why.
You need to make sure you're facing your mic.
Go ahead.
I'm looking straight at you guys.
Okay.
Don't look down, Paul. That's the problem. Zoom, zoom, zoom. You were looking down.
Okay, I won't look down. Okay, so back up. I'm following the direction of Mary and Rich, how they started this about door number 3, because for whatever reason, I feel like I'm not in the loop on this. I don't know why. Is it because I missed a meeting or we didn't have enough discussion about it? I do not want to make a decision on this tonight.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
No,
John already went with door number 3.
I was trying to.
So, yeah, I agree with the majority that have chosen to gather more information and hear more from the public. It's unfortunate when there are people who feel like they haven't been heard. So I really like your suggestion, Jerry, of if you're not in favor of what's been drafted, help us out with suggestions on what works for you, and let us see if we can, make compromises or at least discuss the differences. I really like the effort that this ordinance goes to try and take that adversarial position out of, Planning Commission thinking that they have to approve something because DRC approved it ahead of them, or vice versa if the process was reversed. I don't want anybody feeling like they're stuck approving something just because someone else did. Because each one is doing their review with through a different lens. They're not looking at it from the same standpoint, and rightly so. They've got different issues. I also, I really liked Betsy's comment about, and Deanne expressed it differently, but we are in a National Historic Landmark District, and we do have a responsibility to maintain the feel of that, and that's DRC's purpose. And I totally recognize that, respect it, support it. But let's figure out if there's any additional information that needs to be taken into consideration. So on that note,
you might want to think about, if that's the sense of the board, if I were in the audience, I go, okay, that's great, but what's the process going to be for this additional dialogue?
and that's why I was turning to you.
Yeah. I'm making some notes.
The sound's all garbled again.
Because we're laughing.
Yeah.
Is there, in this process, try not to say as we move forward, because that's one of those bad terms, you're not supposed to say moving forward anymore. Would there be value in having our new planner consultant get involved in this, or are we throwing another
Wrench.
I can make a suggestion around that, I think.
Okay,
Based on what you said earlier, one of the notes I made was it would probably help everyone because it's a hard book to follow unless you're really, devoted to it. It might be helpful to have a flow chart on development review. How does development review proceed? And that's something that the new planning consultant you have can prepare. It's good for them too, because it'll force them to kind of get into the zen of the zoning code here, which you just have to do. I've done it for years, but it's an acquired taste. And that's something I think you might ask them to do as a part of the package so that the board has it and the community has it. Here are the steps. Where in those steps do you want to change things? I've already identified the one section in the ordinance where we do want to change it. That planning commission gives the go ahead before ERC gets to issue a COA, and that's great. So I think I'd involve the planning consultant in that way. In terms of more input from the community, clearly they're ready to do it. If asked, I'm sure Marv would elaborate because that's important to him. It would seem to me probably need to make a choice around, do we ask the planning commission to have one more informational hearing to take that information and make a further recommendation to the board, and then the board have kind of reconvene effectively this second reading hearing? That feels better to me rather than you go out to the public and then you come back to this board. That means poor planning commission's got, to do some work. But if there's a sense that there were people that didn't have the opportunity to express themselves planning commission, this would be the opportunity. But what I would want to suggest is the consultant do the flow chart. I'll look at it because they'll want help on that. I know they will. That gets distributed to people. Here's the flow chart. Take aim at it. Then before the planning commission meeting, there's a deadline for shoot your stuff in written form. Do the hard work of ordinance writing. It's not easy. Do that, and then planning commission's got the flow chart. They've got people's suggestions for what their perfect world is, and planning commission can review that, make a further recommendation to the board. Meanwhile, the ordinance can just sit where it is pending second reading, and then we'll have another session here, but we will have gotten the planning commission recommendation ahead of time. And with that in mind, your staff, Rick and I, will obviously have a staff report for your next meeting that says, we went through this whole process. We recommend that this ordinance be adopted as is. We recommend it be thrown out. We recommend it be changed because of what we have heard. Here are the changes. And that's our job as staff, to prep you for that. Then we have the re-engaged hearing. This group shows up and says they like or don't like what's been in the staff report or what they heard at planning commission. Hang on. And at some point, then the board gets to vote again.
are there applications pending based on this change? And if so, could we,
In the timeline.
I don't want to say moratorium, but basically, we're hoping that this will be resolved in a short period of time. I think that pushes us to make resolution of this.
The code hasn't been changed until you adopt an ordinance changing it. So the development community governed by the code that exists now. That's just true. So you could do a moratorium on development review in between now and when you see this again. That's available to you. The development community won't like that, but every now and again you can do that if you want.
I'm going to ask Cindy to help us out with whatever comment she's got. I'm anticipating it's.
You're largely on discussing we've been largely discussing the process aspect of it. And the process aspect of it needs help. And I think that both commissions, and I think that Mark has also pointed out, we're all in basic agreement that the process part of it needs help. The other part of it is the floor area ratio. And that's a whole different thing than the process.
Of course.
So I think that we also need to know what the board wants, what more the board wants to know about the whole concept of floor area ratio, the ratio chosen, not chosen, why chosen. I mean, what other background is necessary to answer that question? I think it would be, and I hope this would, I think it would be very kind to the DRC if all of this is up in the air, if we did put just a brief moratorium on the development decisions out of the DRC, and I would hope that that's brief. I'm with Mary
Okay.
on that.
I guess I was gonna also ask if it would be beneficial for, when this issue goes back to planning commission, if it's again a joint planning commission DRC meeting, just so that any issues that DRC also has with the guts and the, you know, the really difficult questions that we're trying to answer here, that they get a chance to voice.
Saves you having to have two
Exactly.
hearings, so you can do it all at once, and there it is. And I agree with Cindy, there's the process side, and in part that section 2 of the ordinance addresses a little bit of that. Then there's the merits, but in my world, I guess, it isn't the board telling the community what the board wants to see. It's the community telling, you know, that's one of the sharpen your pencil, Marv, and tell us what you think. And write an order, you know, write it, or sharpen your pencils, anybody, and tell us what you think. I think that's part of the invitation, as I conceive it, is write that one.
The concept of floor area ratio is something that we have the concept of lot coverage, which is our only controlling concept. Floor area ratio is a concept that is widely used in order to have things within two spaces. And so if this board is, opposed floor area ratio considerations, that probably, I would hope that's not the case, but
Well, I'm not sure you're going to get that reaction from the board tonight. I just don't think that's on because they closed the hearing. Clearly they want to hear more from the community before they make a decision, and that may well be affect what they think about floor area, really.
okay.
So it's kind of back to process and sort of what the board wants to direct the staff do, and it would be some form of motion that I'm happy to do, is a motion direct staff to set a meeting of DRC and Planning Commission, at which with notice to the public that that's the opportunity for them to comment on this ordinance, both as to process and substance.
Okay.
Invite the public to not only attend, but in advance to provide their suggestions for what their perfect world is. Then after that meeting has taken place, reschedule it for continued board action at second reading.
Okay.
It's really that simple, I think.
Okay. How does the rest of the board feel about the idea of a short moratorium? Yes, Paul?
I agree. Can you hear me? Because I'm talking right to you guys.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. The way Jerry described it, I really liked, because maybe it's my fault, maybe it's the town's fault, but I don't think I'm the only one. But I cannot connect the lines. I cannot connect the dots between these two boards. and what that process is. And I think if everybody got on the same page about what this process is and what the expected outcomes are, I think it would clarify a lot of different things, because I think people are maybe looking at this and then maybe they're even looking at it through their own, well, obviously they will be looking at it through their own glasses. But there's a disconnect for me. And I'm being honest with you guys, I need an education on this. A
Okay.
presentation, the flow chart, the whole thing. So I can connect those dots and I have that oh wow moment, the light bulb goes up. Okay, now I get it. Now I understand what's going on here. That's my
Okay.
piece.
What about a short moratorium just to give time to process this so that we're not holding anybody at a unfair disadvantage, or someone else has an unfair disadvantage going through a process while this is being done?
Well, I think a moratorium may be required, but let's define how short is short. What kind of a time frame are we looking at?
Okay. Does it,
Reasonable, 30 days.
30 days.
We would at least have progress at that point if we wanted to pull back on the moratorium, because we could do so.
well, you can always rescind it.
I think out of respect for our planning and DRC, it's not like everybody that helps this town do what we do, get paid the big bucks. And you guys have put in a lot of time, and we put in a lot of time, and, you know, respecting that, I would feel most comfortable if we had a short 30-day moratorium to start.
Does that allow enough time for the meetings?
I don't know, but let's put the
So when you can have the meeting, I think that would probably, that joint
DRC.
meeting when.
Yeah, DRC meets twice a month, just as we do. I mean, you can't drag this out. It's gonna thaw, we're gonna start building roads again, we might start building houses again and pouring foundation, so, you know, let's get the fire lit. Ooh, forward.
Does 30 days sound like it's going to be enough?
That sounds like enough for the boards.
I mean, the plan, can I just say something, one little thing? The
Certainly.
planning commission meeting is next week.
Okay.
And then they don't meet again, they only meet once a month, so that they don't meet again until February 15th.
Okay.
So
We're talking a special meeting, combined.
A combined meeting. Is it?
Well, yeah, I would like to say something too.
This is Dwayne talking again.
Yeah, this is Dwayne, sorry. Because that's one thing too, you know, considering all this and the process and how fast this goes through. Which, I mean, yeah, we've met since July, so it seems like forever. I always assumed that people were aware of it and they get the public notice and such, and obviously they didn't. But also too, being aware of this building code, when we adopt new building codes, and we always argue against what we can do and what we can't do. Building code is the biggest deciding factor when it comes to building. Code can change a little bit and cost a contractor thousands of dollars. You know, but when those are adopted, then you know they're playing up in advance. And it amazes me that this could pass tonight and then that's that, and then everybody has to adapt to that. So I think after listening to this meeting, I better understand kind of where Mark's coming from, because as a builder, you plan 6 months to a year out on your project, you know, going through DRC, et cetera, before you ever get a permit. And if there's change, it affects that. Timeframe as far as this getting together again, so that everybody can better understand, I'm definitely in favor of. But let's definitely, I don't want to rush it like the next week. Let's this time make sure we allow enough time so that everybody has that input. I would love for Mark and Craig to be at the meetings. We could have used all the input that we had, and then we wouldn't be doing this now. So whatever we can do to best fit that, I'm definitely in favor of.
Okay.
But then also too, as we move forward this, like, that's what I was going to ask Jerry, how, you know, can you set up a time frame so that it doesn't affect people that are already in the process of designing projects now, that we're going to adopt this then? it makes it tough. I mean, that's on both sides of the fence. Yeah, you want stuff that is historic, but if you're in the process of building right now or designing, which is part of it, it's all part of it. How do we fit those needs also? And I'm just kind of putting it out there. Which, after hearing your guys' report, it makes sense on you guys wanting to understand this better. Sorry.
Yeah, on that one item, there's more term on just taking action. But then there's, okay, if there are projects that are in the pipeline, that if you do more term are now kind of frozen in the pipeline, right? And okay, that's how those work. But when they're unfrozen and the ordinance is approved, then you have a couple of choices around the application of the new rule. And I've often rewritten land use codes where you provide a section at the end that says, look, these are the new rules that apply as of the date we're adopting this. But the old rules continue to the extent you have an application that's at this point in the process, but not yet approved, then you get the old rules are preserved until you're done, until you're out of the pipeline. So projects in the pipeline. Sometimes that inspires people to file a bunch of applications to get in the pipeline. Now, if you have a moratorium, then you've frozen that too. That's a policy choice that the board would need to make, not tonight, but they'd need to make when this came back on second reading to say, okay, what projects are in the pipeline and should this apply to them or not? You can basically exempt them and preserve the old system in place for them until they're processed. That's commonly done. It's a policy choice you get to make. I'm not saying you should make it either way, but that's available as a tool. And I recognize why Dwayne asked that question, because that's really real for people. That has huge impact for them. And we can structure that, but you don't have to do that tonight, but it's something that needs to be thought about and can be injected into that ordinance on second reading when SNF get around to approving it.
And can we direct, first of all, I would love to see a flow chart on how this works. I'd like to know what's in the pipeline.
Yeah.
I think that's.
I want to know that.
Absolutely. And I think we need some time to gather that information and to have that joint meeting. I'm not sure, just is it 30 days? Is it 45 days? What works?
What is the pipeline?
That is projects that are already being planned that might have.
They have an application.
Are they in the designer's head? Are they in process in town? Because you can produce a rough on this office by saying, okay, if you throw something in, you're gonna be grandfathered.
And that's what you're trying to avoid, because
Right.
that's, yeah.
Trying to.
So I think we need to address the applications that have been, received so far, because we don't want to put a clog on it.
And that's what I was asking. Well, to me, that's the pipeline. As of today,
Well, if you do, these things work together. If you do a moratorium, then the pipeline shuts off, right?
As of tonight.
Because if you do a moratorium on the acceptance and processing of applications requiring action by the Planning Commission, DRC, or Board of Selectmen, then, and if you do that tonight and somebody shows up tomorrow with an application in hand, the town will not receive those. If it's not going to receive them, they're not in the pipeline.
So
preserving your ability to then look at, when you get to second reading, okay, what's in the pipeline? Do we care about those? Do we not? That's kind of the wrong way to say it, but are we intending that these new rules should apply to them or not? And if so, how do we kind of slice and dice that up? But that's something that preserves your ability to make that choice. That's what it does.
But I think we need a short span of time, because, okay, I'm the young family and I'm working with Marvin. I want to buy his X lot that's available, and I'm starting to work with my architect. I'm not going to buy his property until I know and what my floor area ratio is going to be and what my flow chart is. I can hold my breath for 30 days, okay? But and then hopefully there's movement at or I get to work. 45 days, 60 days, we're starting to see his deals go in the toilet. The architect is starting to, not work on those projects. I'm not gonna pay my architect to do a 2,000 square foot home on this one and the 2,700 square foot home on this one. We need to keep this a short time, so life goes on for everybody here. We can always extend it.
I think my asking was, can the boards provide us what we need in 30 days? Do they meet? Is it gonna be a special meeting or what? That was all I was trying to get to.
Well, and a comment that Jerry made earlier is, can we ask that the comments that come in are based on a response to what has already been presented? In other words, is this like wide open season here, or is it more specifically, I don't agree with the math on that ratio associated with that size of lot. I'm recommending that this could be 300 feet or something. But in other words, it can't be a free for all at this point, I don't believe. I think we have to take this baseline and we can throw the whole baseline out, but we should be operating in terms of people responding to what has been presented and not responding from the standpoint of this is again our civil rights, but really talking about the rights.
Yeah, you can certainly say these are the comments that we're encouraging be made. And these are the edits that, or the scope for the edits that we really want to hear from you on. I can't prevent anyone, and never would, from writing a letter saying, you know, that's fine, but honestly, we need to go with the Houston approach, where their uses are, every use is allowed everywhere. And that's my idea, because it's my idea. And it's a free country. They've got absolutely the right to say that to the board. And I'd stand with them to say they got the right to say that. They got the right to say that, and the board does not have the obligation to give a lot of weight to that. So, you know, if you want to have a real impact, the idea would be, you know, color within the lines, because then your comment will be taken much more seriously. You know, and everyone in this room is long of tooth enough to know, you know, how to serve their goals better. Yeah. I think there's probably two. Yeah.
I would just say, there's really two issues. One is the process issue, which, you know, the flow charting, and that would be done by the planner. I don't see that the two boards would have really much of any additional input into that.
What the goal in pulling the two boards, the two commissions together, is to receive new information that was not presented at earlier meetings, because this board feels like that needed to be heard. The public statement tonight gave me the impression, and I assume the rest of the board, that there was other information that should have been considered. But we want those two commissions to discuss it before it comes back to the selectmen.
And I agree, and that's why I was getting to is that, you know, the process about, you know, when does DRC act, when does Planning Commission act, that's a process thing, and it's pretty straightforward. The real thing is the substance of changing the code on what is the criteria that can be applied to a lot, what criteria should be applied to land to build something on it. And that definitely involves the two boards, primarily the Planning Commission. But
well, I think it's more of just the criteria. Two have to go forward together.
They do.
And I certainly would welcome more public input on that.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, should be the focus of the joint meeting.
I think that's where we're headed. So
and Bob's point about that, in terms of the scope, and Betsy's, in terms of the scope of the comments that the board's looking for, is that. And it may, you know, it's not the whole world, but, you know, if I'm Marv and I want to say, okay, the FAR approach is not the right approach. This is the right approach for sizing homes as against the lot. that's fair game, I think. Absolutely fair game to articulate that. And so he doesn't have to say, well, I disagree with 0.3 FAR and I'm really arguing for 0.2. He may not want, poor Marv, he sits there and we all put words in his mouth. We all put words in his mouth, but he showed up and made himself available for words to be put in his mouth. So it's not like I'm doing anything wrong here. But that scope, I think, in fact, this dialogue, I think, is useful because it really gets down to how do we fit appropriately homes on property appropriately in these zone districts in town, and what's your idea for doing that in a way that's sensitive to what we all try to accomplish. I'm thinking that there's probably two actions the board at some point you'll need to say, okay, what next? Can we move on? Yeah. There's probably two actions you need to take. One is direction of the staff to ask the consultant to prepare a flow chart on development review, to request that the staff set a joint meeting with the planning commission and DRC to obtain the comment that you have asked for that meeting to take place at least within what will be the moratorium period. Then the second action is the moratorium. You might want to take that first and plug in time frame in, then everybody will know how soon they got to get these other meetings done. And I've made notes for what would be a very short form moratorium resolution, which you need to do by resolution. There's plenty of them done. We've done it before here. It's a common tool. And all I'd need would be a resolution number. What's the next?
Number two.
Oh, that's right. It's January.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to hurry the process, but I'm ready to do that whenever you're ready to hear me.
The board?
Now we're ready to roll.
All right.
I'm looking for nods.
All right.
Everybody ready for? Okay.
Ready for a
Very
potential motion? A proper motion would be to adopt resolution number 2, resolution imposing a moratorium on the acceptance and processing of certain land use applications. The paragraphs of the resolution be as follows: one, that a moratorium be imposed on the acceptance and processing of applications required for approval by the actions of the Planning Commission, DRC, and Board of Selectmen under Title 17 of the Georgetown Municipal Code. Said moratorium to expire on 30 days from tonight's date, unless earlier repealed or extended by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2, series 2023.
As described.
As described. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay.
A second action would be to take a motion to direct town staff to work with the town's new planning consultant to prepare a flow chart on describing development review by the DRC Planning Commission and Board of Selectmen under Title 17 of the code, to also set a time for a joint Planning Commission DRC meeting at which the DRC and the Planning Commission should be ready to accept public comment on the subject of the ordinance number. What's the ordinance number? 5.
Ordinance
on
number
the
5.
subject matter of ordinance number 5. And to publish that schedule and invite members of the public and interested parties to provide any and all comments they have on the ordinance or on revisions to the subject matter. That's the larger scope addressed by that ordinance.
Do we also need to include a motion to continue ordinance number 5 to a future date?
Yeah, if we get direction of the staff to do that in that motion, then we'll take
To a third
sort of a formal motion to
Okay.
continue that.
Okay.
So.
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to direct staff as discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Final proper motion would be a motion to continue consideration, the second reading consideration of ordinance number 5, until a future board meeting to be scheduled.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to continue the second reading of ordinance number 5, series 2022. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you all so much for all of your input. It's very much appreciated.
I appreciate your deliberation, but it's gonna take this much time to get some questions.
The brain cushion. It's not a movie cushion.
Thank you very much.
Wait for things to clear out.
Well, I like research.
Yes. More.
That don't fit it. In other words, we have a maximum.
I mean, that's my application.
So you're supposed to look at the surrounding recorded structures, and you cannot be more than 5 feet above those structures. If the surrounding structures all come in at 17 feet, do I have to give you 25? Because my guideline tells me. Exactly. You see.
Things work together.
That's right, and the more restrictive the laws, and so we can be more restrictive. So if you don't have. You gotta behave.
But that becomes kind of. That becomes a situation. If you have an accident. For the accident, it is available. Right, kind of maximum.
You keep looking at the maximum.
And it makes you, it's the maximum that's available. The fact that it's. There are no.
House right next to a 15 who are historic. I have the right to tell you.
And there are some
Because
strengths.
it's been in our guidelines. It was still there.
Okay,
I just have to say something real quick.
yes.
Paul and Deanne. If the Zoom cuts out at 8:30, it's because I didn't think that public hearing was gonna go so long. So I'll need to probably start up another Zoom and send it to you. It's probably gonna cut out at 8:30. That's what time I estimated it was going,
Okay,
this meeting was going to be done,
okay,
so.
okay. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
Send us the link.
That's just.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going on to agenda item number 3, which is approve, request for proposal for engineering for the Gateway North project. Is this you, Rick?
This is me.
Okay.
So I want to pass this up first.
Deliver the pizza.
I did.
Okay, then you right here. We'll be here any minute.
As long as I did. Okay.
I can't remember the name. Community Matters Institute. Yeah,
Okay, that's what's in here.
yeah.
Barful. Barful.
Oh, that's. Next the other name.
So I've asked Cindy Neely to come because she is a consultant for us during this project, the CDOT and the Gateway Argentine North project. This has been a project that has been Very eye-opening for me personally, because I've never done a project on this scale, but this is an old hat for Cindy. She's a complete expert when it comes to these kind of projects.
Oh, yeah.
There's no complete expert. And so where we are tonight, I'm just gonna just kind of explain the narrative, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Cindy to give a little bit more detail of where we are exactly in the project. But where we are right now, what I'm asking for you guys tonight is to do a conditional approval. And this is to get ahead of the curve so that we don't lose any precious time. As we've noticed with our streets, when you see when one thing gets delayed, it gets delayed now for months before we can do anything. And we're trying to prevent that right now. What the conditional approval means is that we're waiting for CDOT to give us a notice to proceed. This is something that it's probably on someone's desk, and for some reason it's paused. Okay. We have done the RFP process.
We've been approved.
We have submitted our review and done some changes, and then we took that back to CDOT. CDOT has then approved this contractor, this relationship. And so then what we're saying is we can't move forward, but we would like to say we have done our review of picking our due diligence. We've done our due diligence to pick a contractor, even though we've not officially picked them. But we would like to say we would like to move forward as soon as CDOT gives us the notice to proceed. So we're just trying to save some time, and that's what this is doing. And so then I'm going to let Cindy now explain our review process of why we chose HR Green and how fun it was to negotiate with him.
No, he was really good. I'd like to point that out to begin with. But I'd like to preface this by saying it was very, very difficult to raise money for Silver Plum.
Cindy, could you be a bit louder?
I will.
Thank you.
You raise the money for Silver Plum, but the job's done in a day. It was much easier to raise the money for this project, but it is like pulling teeth to get the paperwork out of the government in order to get the project underway. The goal here is that in the summer upcoming, or in the summer and fall coming, we will be building that sidewalk and bike path. But if you back up off of that, we don't have a design for it yet. The town did afford the survey, so we had the base survey, so we can hand that to the design team. But in order for us the design team's gonna take approximately 3 months to get the design together. And then we have to go out for RFPs for construction. So you figure all that out, and we have to get started. Like, we should be started now if we want to get into the 2023 construction season. So what CDOT had said to us, they give us the money, or they announced that we get the money in May of last year. In June, we do meet with them to set up a contract. They say the contract's going to take some time, and they tell the town we can go ahead and bid out the project while we're doing the contract, as long as we don't sign the, we can go through the whole bidding process. We can't contract anybody. And so that's what we did. And in paragraph something here about the third paragraph down, it indicates exactly what we did with the bid process, when it was put on BidNet, when it was advertised in the paper. CDOT's requirement is that it has to be 15 days between its advertisement and your acceptance of bids. We accepted bids on October 14th. We did get 3 inquiries, but only one firm showed up at our walkthrough, and that was HR Green. HR Green in company with THK and Associates. THK and Associates has a very long history. They have been on every aspect of this gateway. They designed it in 2002. So, they're the ones who sort of keep their eye out for when it's around. It's a small project. It's 2 really concrete strips, one on either side of a road. That's why it does not attract much interest in the construction industry. I'm very pleased that the federal government is into large infrastructure projects, but it certainly changes the competitive nature of very small projects because everybody's got plenty of work to do in infrastructure at the moment. But HR Green is also a qualified, it's a CDOT certified design firm. And essentially you have to have one of those to do this project, because the project also has federal money in it. So we reported to CDOT that we only had one firm, and they said as long as we could as long as they met all of the qualifications, and Rick and I went through their packet, and they do meet all of their qualifications, that we were open to negotiate with them. And the first price they gave us was about twice where we ended up, because I don't know what they were building, but it wasn't what we were. I do know what they were. They were taking on as some sort of a more major project than it is, because actually we're not doing very much at all with the road. And you know, if we can afford the lights going down there, we'll get the lights going down there, but we're basically after the sidewalk and the bike trail. And so your town administrator told them that, look, it's gonna have to come in under this amount, because that's what we got, and that's what we're going to do. And he negotiated HR Green, who do want to start to pick up some of the mountain work, because they haven't, and so they have agreed to that. But of course, they agreed to that with a proposal that's good for 90 days. Well, if it was October, guess where we are in relationship to the 90 days. I have been hounding CDOT. They don't want to hear from me anymore, because the local agency contract did come in. Lynette signed it, CDOT signed it. That was the beginning of December. It should have given plenty of time. We then, just because you have the contract does not mean they have encumbered the money. They do a separate letter that indicates which of their federal funds are encumbered for the project. And the option letter for encumbrance went out on October, on December about 12th. It went out of their office to be signed. We haven't seen it, because the minute it comes back, their office will give us a notice to proceed. It is sitting on somebody's desk. Now, the difficulty is that Revitalize Main Street passed out a lot of money, and they gave money to CDOT, they gave money to Creative Industries, which I experienced probably just picked up a whole bunch, but yeah, there is a block of process going on in their contracting office, but our little option letter is truly sitting on somebody's desk at this point. So I am hoping in the next few days, even that we may see it, at which time we want to be able to say to HR Green, go. So we're asking this board to be able to authorize your mayor police judge to sign that contract when we receive a notice to proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
I will second that.
Yeah.
Okay,
This has been pulling teeth.
That's awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All
It's
the help.
not done. You know?
yes, well.
Yeah.
So. It's been moved and seconded to authorize the police judge to sign the contract for services with HR Green as soon as CDOT gives us the go-ahead to proceed. So any further discussion from the board? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful.
I have to produce one of these every 3 months for CDOT, so.
Okay.
Probably get one every 3 months.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda is, we need to appoint two, not necessarily selectmen members, but representatives for Georgetown to the Creek Fire Authority committee that will be creating an RFP to hire a consultant to analyze the operation of the Clear Creek. For appointing these appointees is we need to turn the names into the county manager by the 15th of January. And so we need to do that tonight. I'm willing to serve in that capacity, and Rick said he would be willing to, but it's open.
That's fine.
So.
Sure. So appointed.
Yeah, roll on. Yeah.
You go, Phil.
Okay.
So did I hear Mary make a motion?
I think John's there.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Just make it.
I can't hear anything. Who did what?
Mary did, and then John did.
Mary made the motion to appoint me and Rick to this committee, and John seconded it. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to make those appointments. All in favor, say aye.
And thank you.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, next we have the professional services contract for Cynthia.
Was John
C.
opposed or was Paul opposed or not? Did you vote for or against?
For which one?
He was it. Paul was approving it.
Okay.
So. There we did. There's Cindy's contract.
He really wants to go home.
Okay.
Now
I would love to make this a contract for 20 years. But Cindy wants to be yearly. She is such a asset to this town in so many ways for contracts, negotiations with CDOT and many things. So the contract, the only revision that we have on this is changing the pay scale from $45 an hour to $50 an hour, but they're still only budgeted for $10,000. So she could use it faster. But she's an asset to us, and I just asked that we would move forward with this.
I'll move forward with it. I move to approve the professional services contract with Cindy, CDO.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the professional services contract for Cynthia C. Neely with the changes to the compensation as discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you so much, Cindy. Okay,
Thanks, Cindy.
thank you.
They got 20 minutes.
Okay, we're on to staff items. So let's go ahead and talk about the board packet discussion that Deanne wanted to talk about. I understand your frustration. However, there are times when you absolutely, as happened with this board packet, certain things have deadlines that we need to meet, and we're still meeting statutory requirements for agenda posting and availability of the packet to the public. So we always strive to have the packet as complete as possible on Friday so that the board can pick it up and the public and there are no changes, but sometimes these changes are necessary. And I just ask the board's indulgence and tolerance when that actually has to happen. It's never done on purpose. Go ahead, Deanne.
An emergency is one thing, but this is happening all the time. I'm real regular about going over Friday afternoon and picking up the packet. I like to work with a hard copy, and there's always something that isn't included. I mean, I don't think there's been a complete packet since maybe October or summertime. So we need to do more to get it done, to have it on Friday. It's one thing if, like, for example, there's an emergency at the water plant or something, and to throw that in, even Tuesday afternoon. But this is just too loose and too often.
Okay.
I think that comes back to our staffing, Deanne, and we do a hell of a lot here in town of Georgetown, our staff does. And they sometimes run out of time during the day. I mean, I appreciate being able to get the entire packet too, but my God, I live way over on the other side of town, and I came over and picked up the rest of my packet after, the rest was added. So, things come up, and I know last week, and especially with the holidays, but it doesn't make any difference. It just, they're here working, and I'd rather not have it delayed. Let's move on it, and so.
From the rest of the board? Rick, did you have any comment?
I mean, Deanne, I appreciate your comments. I really do. We strive to get our stuff in a timely manner. We really do. It's not something that we take lightly or flippantly. There are so many meetings that we are in that take.
It's cutting in and out.
That were pulled, that I did by yesterday. We had to revise the agenda because of significant legal issue that.
It's cutting in and out. It's frozen.
That would not have been correct. That would not have been corrected by Friday. We strive to get it done by Friday. In fact, this Friday, I was in so much pain that I did not even come in until 1 o'clock. And I will explain that in my to have our stuff by Friday, and we'll continue to do that. So that is our goal, is to always try to get it done. Unfortunately, there are circumstances that do prevent us from getting that done, or changes and so forth. But yes, thank you for bringing that up, and we will strive to do that.
Okay. All right. Town administrators.
I'd like to add a codicil.
Okay.
I'd like to add a little bit more. I'm expected to do the very best I can with whatever information I have. And when this gets put off, we really, really need to have a solid, like, Friday's the cutoff unless it's an emergency, because how are we who aren't involved in these meetings, which I asked to have links to last time, but we'll not even go into that. It needs to be tried harder. There is no try, like Yoda says, because I can't make a valid assessment when I read through whatever the paperwork is and then it gets changed. It was such a mess this time that I went in Friday and picked up what I thought was supposed to be a completed packet. And by the time I got home, it said, oh, gee, there wasn't paper in for item number 3. And now and then Monday there were more, and Tuesday there were more. And a lot of this could have been corralled. We've done meetings where something was put off until the next one because of it not meeting the deadline. And it just, in spite of what Mary said, I cannot make a valid decision if I don't have adequate information.
Understood. I'm looking at this agenda that was revised several times. I recognize that, but there is not one thing on this agenda that should have been left off and put off till another meeting. So we're to repeat what Mary Smith pointed out. We've got staff that are doing a lot of juggling of tasks, and sometimes they are
It just froze
able
up
to meet
again.
that Friday deadline, and sometimes it's not possible. So we'll be doing the best that we can going forward. Okay. Town administrators report and task list updates.
Okay, so first off, for those who didn't know, I was in a really bad ski accident this past weekend, not this weekend, the weekend before, and was rushed to the emergency room and was in significant pain. And this whole week was very excruciating for me. I did the best I could this week. I felt like staying home every day. And in fact, I forced myself a couple times to take half days just to get home because I couldn't take it. It was really bad. I'm still in a lot of pain. I can't hide it. My staff have been excellent to try to help me. This is going to take 3 or 4 weeks for me to get back to normal. So that's one of the reasons why this week has been really hard. Second is, I want to say, go Dogs, because I'm very proud of Georgia.
65 to 70 members.
Last night, I see an absolute touch kick. So I've got a lot, there's been so much going on this week, it's been insane. The amount of meetings while I'm in pain was just so hard. But I couldn't help but come in and have some meetings because it's just, lodging tax has been something that Mary and I and Jerry have talked about a lot, and we're going to talk more into, but that has been hard week, especially with the county. We have had a letter that was submitted to the town on behalf of Jamie LaCrosse, and I believe you
Justin
guys,
Dowd.
yeah, Justin Dowd sent that, but it was actually written by
Got it.
Jamie LaCrosse, their fiance to Justin.
Okay.
That was sent to you guys. That's something that they're at the crossroads of, wanting direction from us, what to do, and we'll talk about that later. We also had another issue of code enforcement, which then I believe you guys received this letter too. This was from Dana Abrahamson and Craig, and the context was lighted open sign, and whether it be lighted or flashing, we did have code enforcement address. We received complaints, and then we have code enforcement address, go and investigate what's going on. And she did write a long response, and I thought it was very good. Something read it for the sake of time. I'll be brief on it, but it's asking for staff to consider amending the code for the historic commercial area. To be a little bit more accommodating, participate in a business and establishment. So that's something I'm willing and able to talk with Jerry and myself to look at these kind of things and bring a suggestion of what we're thinking. But not only that, there are lots of other things that they have brought to our attention. And I think it's worth having a discussion about it. And so I don't want to take it lightly and flippantly again. I think it's something that, I know we don't have the time tonight, something that we probably should talk about, and then based on your direction, kind of go from there. So maybe next meeting, I'd like to work session. Let me think of some things just from staff related. We are the 22nd Street Bridge. We had planned for that to be finished in December. Many of you guys go down that area and you'll see that it's not finished. That has been a disappointment, something that's out of our control. We have tried really hard to get that thing moving forward. I can't tell you how many conversations we have. Look me in the face and tell me that this is going to get done. This is going to get done. And we're like, no way. And it did get done. And so the things that right now, it's been poured, the foundation has been poured, the wall has been poured, the finishing part of the flat area has not, that's next, and the handrail will be put on. So that's, I've been told to my face that will be done this week. I don't believe that either. But it does cause friction with budget, because that is not, that was supposed to be, that was paid for we budgeted for last year, and now that's going to cause some issues with Mary. And we don't like Mary to have to do a supplemental, but it's something that we're going to have to look at now already. Which also then goes to ESI. ESI is the contracting company to do our road improvements. They the hiccup was they were going to be at Winter Park doing road improvements, and as soon as they were finished, they were going to come to Georgetown. Well, that came, and it took longer for them to get here than we anticipated. Once they got here, they did what do you call the 811 locates. They did locates, and they found, you know, they came out and did all the markings for things, but for some reason it was never marked for the fiber optic line. That there's signs showing fiber optic lines going, but it was never marked. So they started digging, and they found a fiber optic line that was near the annex building, the county annex building. They did a locate again to make sure whoever's this is to go. No one responded, and so it delayed them because they can't proceed until that was corrected. It ended up taking like months before it was figured out whose line this one, and it was an active line, but it was not registering to anyone that it was severed. And it wasn't severed, it was just cut in such a way that still needed to be corrected. Long story, this caused so much of a delay that now their crew is in Mexico doing some work and will not be back until March. And so all that's been delayed. So now our town is probably going to go and try to correct some people's driveways, such as on 8th Street, so people can use that, because this wasn't supposed to happen this way. You know, we were going to have all this stuff lined up so that we would be finished before winter came, and now winter's here, and ESI is planning to come in March now.
Awesome.
Welcome to Georgia.
Yeah, this is how it runs.
Yeah, it's just disappointing on my end of trying to plan and get the stuff. So it's calling us to do, Mary and I, to think about just our scheduling, that we will cut off all schedules by June. If we don't have it planned, we're not doing it, because we're not going to get into this process again for next year. We're going to have these projects done. So I just want to highlight those two significant issues. And the ice rink. Oh, sorry. Yes, Dan.
Why were we not told before we voted on paying for the 23rd Street Bridge?
22nd.
It just, you just said it's not finished, and in the payables this time, we voted to go ahead and pay for that. It seems to me we should not have until it's done.
Mary,
And those are progress payments. There is still one more payment being withheld until he finishes the railing and the finished concrete work. But those are progress payments for what he has done so far.
I would have
Okay.
liked to have been informed of things like that.
And then I guess I got three small things just to bring to your attention. There is a tree that is causing some foundation issues. It's a tree that's on right of way on 308th Street. And I'm in the process of investigating what code says. They would like to remove that tree at their cost. And so just making sure what procedure needs to happen. I know when I was in Brush, there was a tree board that actually reviewed all those kind of trees. And so I don't know the process, haven't had time to research it yet, but that's on my list to look at. Another thing, Neil Duncan, he was here earlier. He brought something to my attention. I'll bring it to you, that we're not going to take action. I'm just bringing it to your attention as we're thinking in different ways, but he would love to consider the town purchasing a Zamboni for the big lake and to smooth that ice. He's even willing to create a public-private partnership and pay 50%. So it's just something that we will look at. And then another thing that this is, it's called ISO. It's a building department insurance rating system. You've heard of it? Okay.
Yeah, fire.
Okay.
Building departments use it too.
Yeah, and so I did it in Brush. It's an enormous amount of time that goes in to do their checklists and questionnaire. And I brought it up to Safefield's attention, and he said it's a complete waste of time, that it takes, they submit paperwork and none of the ratings ever changed, and every time they did it. So he advised me to completely ignore this questionnaire that's come up. So I've been bringing it to your attention. I did it in Brush, and it took me probably 2 weeks to work on this project. It's so much material that they want.
But was it productive afterwards?
Well, they have told me, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. During that time, our insurance rating, and it's for the town as a whole, you know, we were in Brush on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the absolute worst. Brush was a 9. And after doing the paperwork, I got it down to a 5. So it significantly, it could reduce it. But what Dan Wester's, what his feedback was, there's a lot of forms and stuff they rejected from Safefield, of such as building permits, floodplain, building permits in the floodplain, and there's a couple other things, but there was things that ISO rejected and said, sorry, that's not good enough for us. And they're like, that's all we have. And their numbers never changed when they turned it in. So they felt like it was like, why go through all this work? And it didn't change. So I'm bringing it to your attention of.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I would hesitate to take their word for it and trash can it, because all of a sudden their paperwork products weren't satisfactory. We heard that in reverse so many times. I wouldn't just shut the door just because they built us.
And we, with the fire district, we managed to drop our rating, was 5 to 4,
Yes.
which is a huge amount of money saved for homeowners.
Yeah.
And it was mainly just complying with ISO's paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get the paperwork.
And I know that was your department too that did this kind of stuff. So maybe you and I should talk and look at it.
Yeah, let's put that on. Let's keep
Yeah.
that in.
Okay.
I wouldn't,
I like more discussion on that.
Okay.
ignore the paperwork.
Okay. That's my big plus.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more information at next meeting. Could you please write some of this out and include it in our packets?
For the ISO?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And last thing under staff items is the full election schedule, which you've got in your packets.
Who's up?
Paul Hingen's term is up.
Rob
Rob Connell's is up. Mary's
in Ward 3.
and mine.
Everything.
Practically.
You're gonna be the anchor.
So Yes,
Yeah, you got a lot of weight on those shoulders there.
yeah,
Man,
yep,
get busy.
so,
I'm
the,
not sitting here alone.
no,
We'll be back.
I'll be
so,
there.
all right. I think does anybody have anything else? I think we're ready to move on to executive session.
I get my glasses on.
John has the motion.
Okay,
I move to go into executive session. Executive session under CRS 2464024B and E for a conference with the town attorney, town administrator, and appropriate staff to receive legal advice and instruct negotiators concerning lodging tax and pending litigation, quiet title litigation.
Keep going.
I further move to adjourn the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session.
Perfect, thank you.
I love reading.
I would like to have, Mary stay in for the discussion when it comes to the lodging tax.
Appropriate staff.
It was
Right.
Right. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to go to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? No.
Separate.
And
Zoom
so
links?
it'll be a separate Zoom link, and just for the record, I think Paul's coming back for the lodging tax
Right.
discussion.
And then he'll excuse himself as before
Okay,
on the litigation. So we'll do lodging tax first.
okay.
And we should be done by 10:30.
Okay.
I will see you guys